Good afternoon. My name is Jenny Lesser, and I'm the Business Development Manager here at United Training. Welcome to today's webinar, 5 Excel Tips in 20 Minutes, presented by Joseph Christian. We are using GoToWebinar platform for today's session, and we will share a copy of this recording with you. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use that questions option in your GoToWebinar dashboard. Due to our limited time today, we may follow up with your question after the webinar. United Training is excited to present this webinar today, so I will now hand it over to you, Joseph.
Thank you so much, Jenny. So welcome everyone to talking about some tips, 5 tips in Excel. We've got 20 minutes. Some of these tips you may know already or be familiar with, some you may not. So let's go ahead and jump into it here. And the first tip that we are going to be talking about is using navigation shortcuts. In Excel, when we're using Excel, knowing shortcuts can be one of the most important ways that we can become more efficient with our time and with our navigation. I often say that with Excel, the mouse is just not always our friend. We want to be able to navigate through our spreadsheets using often our keyboard in addition to using the mouse. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these navigation shortcuts we have available to us here. So I've got a spreadsheet up here, and it's got a lot of different information on different companies and sales and prices and products. And I want to be able to navigate through this set of data, not just by using the scroll over here on the right, because that can work, right? I can scroll up and down, but that can become really tedious. So the first keyboard shortcut, and sometimes people know keyboard shortcuts, a few of them, or maybe you don't. The first keyboard shortcut specific to Excel that I always like to show is how to use the Control key with the arrows on your keyboard to navigate back and forth in a set of data. So for instance, if I'm up here at the top of my data, up here in A1, if I hold down on the keyboard, the Control key with the down arrow, it's going to drop me down to the bottom. So let's try that out. If I do Control down, you see how it takes me all the way down here to row 2021 at the bottom of my data. If I need to go back up to the top, I can do Control up, and that'll take me back up here to the top. This works going left and right as well. If I do Control right, it jumps me over here to the last column of my data. And if I do Control left, it jumps me back over to the left. Okay, so your Control key is usually at the bottom left of your keyboard. So it's your Control key with your arrows. This can make it so much easier and quicker to jump back and forth between your data in a spreadsheet. I'll do it again here. Let's say I do Control down and it drops me down here to the bottom of my data in row 2021. If I do it again, it's actually going to drop me all the way down to the very bottom of my spreadsheet because it's skipping over all of the blanks. So if that happens to you, don't panic. Just go back up, Control up, and that'll take me back up here to the top. So Control with our arrow keys allows us to bounce around within our spreadsheet. There are other ways that we can navigate with our keyboard as well. Control with the home and end buttons will take us to the end and the beginning of our data. So if I do Control end, it will drop me down to the very last piece of data on the spreadsheet. And if I do Control home, it's going to jump me right up here to the top. Another way that you can use Control for navigation is if you switch back and forth frequently between your spreadsheets. Control with page up and page down will actually navigate you through your spreadsheet. So if I want to get over to my next spreadsheet, I can do Control page down and it will jump me right over there. And then if I do Control home, it takes me back over, or sorry, Control page up. It'll take me back over to the first spreadsheet. So Control with page up and page down will take you back and forth between the spreadsheets. One more way that I want to show a keyboard shortcut here. This is for selecting data. Now, we might already know that if we want to select an entire column, we can click on the column letter up here at the top, right? So if I want to select all of column A, I can click on the letter A and it selects it. However, when I do that, and we'll take a look here, if I come up here and click on that letter A, you'll see that it also selects everything underneath my data. And this can be a problem. You don't always want to select everything. So another alternative, I can come up here to the top and I can do the keyboard shortcut Control Shift down. It's 3 keys. So it's the Control key like we did a second ago, Control with the arrow keys, but this time we're adding Shift in as well. So I'm going to do Control Shift down, and now it selects that entire row of data, or that entire column of data, but it stops down here at the first blank. You can use that with any of your arrow keys. So you can do Control Shift down, Control Shift up, left, or right. And it selects all of the data until it runs into a blank, and then it stops. So those are some keyboard shortcuts I suggest trying out using your Control key with your arrows, with Home and End, with Page Up and Page Down, and then Control and Shift with your arrows. So the Control key is our friend, right? We can do all sorts of different keyboard shortcuts using the Control key. And I always suggest with Excel that we should always be practicing and learning a new keyboard shortcut. So these are some good places to start if you are unfamiliar with any of those keyboard shortcuts in there, okay? There are a lot more, but those are just some good basics to start with there. So those are our navigation shortcuts. Next, let's take a look at working with the Flash Fill tool. This is an amazing tool that we received with Office 2013. So if you have Office 2013 or newer, you should see it in Excel. And it's going to be over here in our Data tab. It's really tucked away and hidden in our little Data Tools group. But I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that we can utilize it in here. Okay, so I'm going to jump over to our Flash Fill worksheet here. And what the Flash Fill does is it allows us to very quickly combine or separate data. So let's take a look at some data I've got in here. In columns A and B, I've got a first name and a last name. Let's say that I want to combine those together. Well, I can do that using the Flash Fill tool. So what I'm going to do is come over to column C here, and let's zoom in a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to put in exactly how I want to see that data. So I'm going to type in Acosta, comma, space John, right? So I'm combining those names together. And then I press enter. And now all I have to do is click on the Flash Fill tool. Now again, it's hard to find this Flash Fill tool. So if you want to use the keyboard shortcut, you can use Control E, your Control key with the letter E. So let's see how that goes. So I come over here, I typed in exactly what I want, I press enter, and then I do Control E or click on my Flash Fill button, and look at that. Magic. It puts it all right in there for me for the whole column. I love this tool. Let's try another one. I'm going to come over here for the email address. Let's say I want to take these names and turn them into email addresses. So I can type in john.acosta@work.com. And I make sure I spelled it right, so it's going to recognize my pattern. I press enter. And then again, I can do Control E or click on my Flash Fill button. And there we go. It's going to automatically look at what I had and kind of complete that pattern in there for me. Really, really powerful tool that we can use here. One thing to be aware of that it might not work is if you have a blank column separating your data. Okay, so let's say I come over here and I want to create a full name based on this email address. Well, when I type it in, so I type in John Acosta, and then I try to use that Flash Fill tool, it's telling me it can't figure out where I got my pattern from. So that's because I have this blank column. I'll just add a little dash in there to build a bridge between those columns, or I could delete the column. And now when I come up and use that Flash Fill tool, oh, still doesn't want to pull it up. So that's one that you kind of have to work with sometimes when you have a blank column of data in there, or sometimes it can be a spelling issue and you may not have spelled it properly. You just want to double check for some of those items in there. But look out for that Flash Fill tool. Again, it's in the Data Tools group of the data ribbon, or you can use Control E, and it can be great for taking data and breaking it apart. So for instance, my email address is here, right? I can grab John Acosta and then go in and use that Flash Fill tool. It's like I'm looking all over. Sometimes you have to get a little bit more of the data in here. Let me see if I can give it normal, if it's going to find it for me. There we go. Sometimes you just have to give it a little bit more of the data in there, and it'll pull it right up. So that is our flash fill tool. It's a really nice one to have in our back pocket there. The next one we're going to look at is using our auto functions, okay? And a function is like a pre-built formula. So if you work with formulas at all in Excel, using a function can be helpful, and they give us some that are automatically there. So I'm going to jump over to a spreadsheet where we want to just do some calculations. We want to get a total or an average in here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the home ribbon, and if you're clicked on your home tab, over here in the editing group, we have an auto sum button. It's a sigma symbol, like that Greek looking E there. So I can, let's say again, I want to add up all 4 of these totals in here. So I'm going to come up and I'm going to click on that auto sum button. And what it does is that it automatically pulls up the sum function, and it guesses which numbers that I'm trying to add together, and it's getting it exactly right. So now I can just press enter or tab, and I'm good to go. Okay, so I'll do that one more time here. I click where I want my total to be, then I come up and press the auto sum button in the editing group of the home ribbon, and when I click on that, it brings up the sum function, and then it automatically guesses the numbers that I want to add together. All right, let's go ahead and do another one. This one's going to be the average. So I click where I want my answer to be, right underneath average here. And now this time I'm going to go up to the drop down arrow for the auto sum. So right next to that sigma symbol for the auto sum, we have a little drop down arrow there. And this gives us access to other functions. So I click that drop down. This time I'm trying to calculate the average. So I click the drop down and then select average. And it's doing exactly what the auto sum did, the auto average. It's pulling up the average function, but it's guessing which items I want to average together. Notice it's including my total, which I do not want it to do. So you have to be careful sometimes and make sure it's grabbing what you want. But it's really easy to fix. I can just click and drag to select the correct number in there. Okay, so I'll do that one more time. I go to the auto sum drop down arrow and select average, and it pulls up that average function right in the cell that I was clicked in. And then I can just click and drag to reselect the correct cells. And now it's averaging together B2 through E2, which is exactly what I want. We'll also see in that auto sum dropdown the max and min functions. So if I want to find the highest number from those 4 quarters, right? So what was my highest number from those 4 quarters? I can use max. And again, just reselect the data to make sure it's pulling in correctly. Same for the lowest here. The lowest would be the min function to pull that right in. Now, if I know that it's going to be pulling up more data than I want, like we have in here sometimes, you can also select the data first. If I select the data first and click on the auto sum, it just pops my answer up in the nearest spot. And sometimes that can be easier. So I'll select these cells, go to my auto sum dropdown and select average, and it just pops up the average right where I want it there. Now, this isn't always the best solution depending on how your data is set up, but it can be a really good way to pull this up. Now, we already brought up keyboard shortcuts. So the shortcut for the auto sum is Alt equals. So on my keyboard, I can do Alt equals, and that will also pull up the auto sum function in there. So I just want you to be aware of those auto functions because they can be really quick, really easy to pull up, especially when you're trying to total numbers together, pull up an average, something like that. All right, so those are our auto functions. The next tool that I want to show you is working with the fill handle and working with our fill handle options. And the fill handle, if you might have used it before and just not known what it was called. That's absolutely possible. Nothing wrong with that. So let's take a look at what that fill handle is and how it works in here for us. And the fill handle, let me zoom in a little bit here just so we can get a little bit better of a look. And if you ever see these pound signs, don't panic. It's just telling you that your columns are not wide enough. So I'm just gonna grab all my columns here and double click between my column letters. This is like a bonus tip, okay? If you grab your columns like this and then double click between any two of those column letters up at the top, boom, snaps them right into place. That's a really handy one too. All right, so I just zoomed in a little bit here so we can see a little bit better. The fill handle is when you click on a cell or a group of cells. So I'm clicked on this sum function here. Notice we get this little green square in the bottom right corner of the cell, okay? So you may have never noticed this before if you haven't used the fill handle. Notice when I point at that green square, my cursor changes to this black plus sign, this small black plus sign. This means that it's going to do something different from what it normally does. And what the fill handle does, can do a lot of different things, but initially what it's going to do is copy my data. Now you may be familiar with formulas that when you copy a formula, it will often update the formula to reflect the correct row. So let's take a look at this here. So if I click and drag on this fill handle and I drag it down to the next row, it's going to copy this formula, but then it's going to change it so that it affects row number 5 instead of row number 4. So I'm going to click my fill handle and drag it down here and let go, and there we go. It copies it right down for me. So the fill handle copies what you have in there. Now you could do a copy and paste and perhaps get the same result. This can just be a lot quicker, because something else that we can do is double click that fill handle. And if I double click that fill handle, it's going to copy that all the way down for the column, okay? So I can actually do all 3 of these at once. I'm going to select these functions, even though they're different functions in different cells, that's fine. And I'm going to double click the fill handle in the bottom right corner, and that pulls them right down. And when you use your fill handle, you will get autofill options to change how it's autofilling. Because let's say that I have some numbers up here. Let me do this number, and let's say that it's bold, right? So I change the formatting to bold. Maybe I want to underline it as well and put it in italics. If I copy that down, it's kind of screwing everything up sometimes depending on how it goes down. So you can also choose it to fill with the formatting only, or choose to fill it without the formatting. So let me show this again here. Let me backtrack a little bit. So I'm going to copy this down and say, oh, I don't like that it kept all the formatting. So I click on my autofill options and I tell it to fill without formatting, and there we go. So be aware of that you can control how your autofill works. Notice our friend the flash fill is popping up in there. So you can actually use the flash fill with your autofill as well, which is fantastic. So when you use the autofill, just make sure that you are aware of those fill handle options, and you can click on that little button when it pops up. The last tool we're looking at here today is Paste Special. And Paste Special is amazing because when you copy data in Excel, we have so much control over how it is pasted. Let's look at an example. Let's say that I like the formatting on this cell. So I'm going to copy this cell and I want to paste that on to the data over here in this column on the left. So what I'm going to do is right click on the data and select Paste Special. So I copied the initial cell, and when you right click, you can click on Paste Special and you get all these amazing paste options. So I'm going to say that I just want to paste formats and then press OK. And now it pasted that formatting on from the cell that I copied. Another example, and I use this one a lot. If anyone works with comments or notes in Excel, notice over here in column G, I've got notes on some of these different numbers. And let's say I want to copy those notes and put them onto the names of the people over here in column A. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, again, select the data and copy it. Once I've copied it, I don't want to paste the numbers. I just want to paste the notes. So I'm going to come over here to column A, right click and select Paste Special. And when I click on Paste Special, I can tell it to just paste the comments and notes. And then I press OK. And there we go. Now it added those exact notes onto these cells. One more example of this I want to show. Let's say I take, remember our first worksheet we worked with all this information. Let's say I want to copy this and paste it. I'll just put it over here off to the side. I want to paste this information over here. So I'm going to click up here at the top and then I do a paste. Look what happened. My column widths did not paste over. So instead of pasting it that way, when I right click and go to paste special, I can select pasting the column widths. And now it's going to bring over the correct column widths. Okay, so that is our paste special, which is the last item in here. That's the last of our 5 tips in 20 minutes. So thanks for joining us here today, everyone. If you do have any questions, go ahead and throw those into the chat. We don't have time to answer them now, but we will follow up with you via email. Good luck with Excel. Good luck with your shortcuts. Hopefully these tips were helpful for you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe out there.